Welcome back, Careblazer. In today's video, I want to share with you 5 simple things that you can do to improve those really difficult dementia behaviors. Difficult dementia behaviors is by far the topic that I receive the most emails on because it leads to a lot of caregiver stress and frustration, and it can consume a lot of hours in the day. So these 5 simple tips are something that you can start doing right away today, and I hope you'll start to see some of the benefits that many other Careblazers have started to notice when they implement these practices. Now, before I share those 5 tips, I want to personally invite you to my upcoming live Q&A. Basically, in a week, if you're watching this video live, I'm going to be hosting a live question and answer session where you can ask me whatever dementia caregiving questions you have. I receive a lot of emails from Careblazers all around the world, and I'm not able to respond to every single question. So this is a really great opportunity that if you have a question, you want to hear my input, join me live for the Q&A. It's totally free, and the link is below this video. So just click on the link, register to save your spot, and feel free to invite any other friends, family members, or even people in your local support groups to participate as well. Any Careblazer is welcome. All right, let's dive into the 5 tips, and I want you to let me know which one of these 5 tips you plan to implement right away starting today. That's really going to be my challenge for you and what I want you to take away from this video. I want you to just decide on one of these tips and then start doing it and see what changes you notice. So the very first tip is your facial expressions, to be really mindful of your facial expressions. In dementia, the brain starts to have more and more difficulty following and understanding words. You could be saying the most loving and kind words, but if your face looks tense and stressed, your loved one with dementia is going to be more likely to show some of those difficult behaviors. Think about how stressed you might look when you are trying to get dinner ready or trying to help your loved one take a bath or get dressed, or when you're trying to gather everything you need to leave the home to run an errand or go to work. You could be saying the sweetest, nicest things to your loved one with dementia, like, I love you, I'll be home soon, we'll make your favorite meal. You could be saying the words could be so nice and loving, but if you're stressed when you're doing it, you're not making the eye contact, you're rushing around, the tension's in your face, it doesn't matter what loving words are coming out of your mouth. Your loved one is paying attention. You're a mirror. That's how I want you to think about it. Your loved one is looking at your face and realizing, okay, something is wrong here. So first tip is basically be mindful of your facial expressions. Realize that you're a mirror and your loved one's more likely to reflect back to you whatever emotions they're seeing on your face. Tip number 2 is your tone of voice. Now, this is similar to the facial expressions, where in dementia, the ability to fully understand and follow sentences starts to decline. And in these cases, the way you say your words matter a whole lot. So when you say something quickly or sternly or while stressed, you're increasing the chances that your loved one's going to have some of those difficult dementia behaviors. But if you were to take the same exact words and say it in a more calm way, in a more loving way, in a more kind way, like the tone of your voice, you could be saying something that is just very matter of fact, or even something they're not necessarily going to be excited about, but the tone of your voice makes a really big difference. So for example, if it's time to take medication, you can say something like, it's time to take the medication now, right? Where you're like stressed, you're realizing it's time, you're trying to get dinner ready, whatever the case may be, versus, oh, look at the time, it's time to take medication. It's time to take medication now. It's time to take the medication now. Like, same words, different tone really makes a difference. And again, it goes with the facial expressions too. Those two kind of tie hand in hand. But simply changing your tone of voice can really go far here. All right, tip number 3 is to avoid correcting your loved one with dementia. It's natural to see somebody doing something wrong and want to offer them help or correct them in some way. But if we did this for our loved ones with dementia, we would be spending the majority of our days correcting them or telling them how to do something differently, because a lot of times they don't actually do things correctly or in the most efficient way, or even in the way that you would prefer them to do it. But when you correct your loved one with dementia, it starts to wear away at the relationship. It starts to make it more likely that your loved one's going to resent you. And it's very important, regardless of whether or not they have a disease like dementia, that people feel like they're valued, they have worth, that they're able to contribute. So here's my rule of thumb when it comes to when to correct, right? Because we can't just let our loved ones with dementia do everything they want to do without intervention. But basically, if there is not a safety issue, then let it be, right? If nobody's safety is at risk, then it's probably not that important for you to correct them. You can just let them go about doing what they're doing. So if your loved one is working on a puzzle and they're totally doing it the wrong way and they don't seem frustrated by it or even aware that they're doing it the wrong way, let them do the puzzle the wrong way. If they put their socks on inside out, who cares? They're putting on their socks. That's great. If they call somebody by the wrong name, you can let it slide. Again, if safety's not a concern, let it go. This can do wonders over time for your relationship. And it can also, the reason why this is included in this video for how to reduce difficult dementia behaviors is because chances are when you continually correct your loved one with dementia, they're going to get frustrated, irritable. They might even argue back or say they're right. They might say, I don't need your help, or stop it, or you're always correcting me, or why are you treating me like a child, right? So the simple act of you, from the goodness of your heart, trying to help them and correct them, in their eyes and their view is, you're always interfering. I'm doing totally fine. Why are you telling me I'm wrong, right? So avoid correcting when safety is not an issue. Tip number 4, avoid saying no whenever you can. Nobody really likes to be told no, right? It's something that people with dementia and without dementia don't really like hearing often. And when you say the word no to somebody with dementia, that word can be triggering in and of itself. And it can lead to some anger and agitation and even some resistance from your loved one. So this doesn't mean that you say yes to everything or that you agree with everything. It just means that you get really creative in the way that you respond to your loved one. So if your loved one all of a sudden said, hey, let's go buy a new car, or I want to buy a new car, instead of saying, no, we can't do that, or no, you don't need a new car, or no, you don't even have a driver's license, or no, why would you want to do that, right? That no is going to be a trigger. Instead, you can say something like, man, I wish we had all the money in the world to get all the beautiful cars we wanted. And then you can look at changing the subject. Or you can say something like, wouldn't that be nice? It's just not in the cards right now. You know what we could do though? We could go for a car ride later and take a look at the wildflowers along the side of the road. They're so beautiful right now. Or you can say something like, oh, a car, that sounds exciting. Tell me what kind of car you're thinking about. Then you engage them in a conversation about the car. And in the end, you don't even outright need to mention that they wanted to buy a car in the first place. You get so involved in the conversation about what kind of car, where would they go, what was your favorite car when you grew up, what was your first car when you grew up. My first car was a Nissan Sentra. And then you start to redirect the conversation. Where did you go in your car? Did you drive your friends around? Oh, I remember driving down to Tennessee. We had spent this beautiful summer in Nashville. Where was your favorite place to vacation? It really just, it's almost like a new language and a new way of like thinking. So often we want to just respond to people because that's the way we respond to most people. Like we respond to what they're saying directly. In dementia, sometimes you want to respond to their question or to their request or to their statement without actually ever directly responding to it, but you're able to redirect. But the general gist here is avoid saying no, because the minute they hear that no, it tends to lead to some agitation and anger. All right, and tip number 5 is to avoid reasoning. Again, when we're talking to most people and they say something that's completely implausible or doesn't make sense, we might correct them or, try to get some more information about what's going on and then provide them with the evidence of why that's not true. In dementia, this can be really harmful to the relationship. It can lead to a lot of anger and frustration and resentment from them. It could lead to yelling. It could lead to them starting to be suspicious of you, that maybe somehow you are against them. Avoiding that urge to reason is so very important, and it can be so hard to resist doing. So this is basically where your loved one's going to say something that's totally not true. They're going to believe it very, very strongly, or they're going to say something that is just totally off the wall. And instead of you telling them they're wrong and trying to correct them and then show them all the reasons why they're wrong, you just find a way to respond that avoids the whole proving them wrong point. So let me give you some examples. So some common ones I've heard from careblazers and that I've seen in my own practice would be things like the person with dementia believing their spouse is having an affair. And every single time the spouse is around, they're yelling at them, accusing them of not loving them, thinking they're having an affair. Or somebody's breaking into the house and stealing all the silverware or stealing the purse or moving things around. Or the person with dementia is seeing imaginary people in the home. Right? Instead of telling your loved one constantly, I'm not cheating, why are you saying that? Or saying nobody's breaking into the home and stealing the things, or saying there's nobody in the house, there's no imaginary people there, right? All of those things you're trying to prove them wrong with evidence, and it doesn't go well. So here are some things you can do instead. For instance, thinks they have to go to work tomorrow, even though they've been retired for 20 years. You wouldn't say, honey, you've been retired for 20 years, you don't work anymore. Whereas they might get really upset or agitated or say they were just at work the other day. You might say something like, you know what, tomorrow we put in for your day off, we're going to relax around the home. Or your boss called and the day's off tomorrow. Or if you want to avoid kind of the compassionate lie altogether because it doesn't fit right with you, you could say something like, you really like working, don't you? You're such a good worker. What's your favorite part of working? Was your favorite job growing up? And again, you're redirecting the conversation. You don't necessarily even need to go back to the point that they said they had to work tomorrow, right? And that's just going to let that conversation go on and on and on where they're not going to change their mind. You just engage them in a conversation and eventually switch the subject and move on to something else, and then the topic drops. Here's another example. Let's say your loved one's sitting on the couch and they're saying somebody's sitting, there's a stranger in my house, they're sitting right next to me, they're getting really agitated. Instead of saying nobody's right there, which in their mind they see somebody there, so then they're just going to get upset with you, you say, oh wow, okay, let me see what's going on here. Here, come with me. You sit here, like you move them a little bit out of view in the kitchen, give them a snack, give them something to do, and you say, I'm going to go take care of this. And then you go take care of this, right? You just remove them from the situation, acknowledge how they're feeling, and then find a way to move on. Another example might be, like if your loved one is somebody who's saying you're constantly having an affair, you would just say something like, I love you so much, there is no way I could ever love anybody more. Or or you can just respond to that emotion behind their words, which is like, I'm never going to leave you. I'm always going to be here for you. Through thick and thin, through good and bad. That's what I said when we got married, and I believe that with all my heart, right? Again, you're avoiding that direct, you're wrong, I'm not doing it, the argument when they're so stuck in their belief, but you're just acknowledging what they're saying, you're not resisting it, you're not trying to disagree with them or disprove it, and then you're just, you're acknowledging how they feel, you're paying attention to the emotion behind the words, and then you're finding that opening to move on. Notice how in none of these examples am I giving any sort of rational, direct explanation. In our minds, in our healthy minds, that's what we want to do, that's what makes sense, that's our natural reflex. But when it comes to interacting with our loved ones with dementia, it leads to resentment. So I want you to try at all costs to resist that urge to reason with them. Careblazer, here is my challenge to you. I want you to take one of these 5 tips and I want you to practice them on a daily basis as much as you can for a week. Take note of the changes you notice in your loved one with dementia and let me know how it goes. I guarantee you are going to notice some improvements. These tips can truly be helpful. So watch your facial expressions. Remember that your tone of voice is really important. Avoid that urge to correct them if safety is not an issue. Avoid saying no and avoid that urge to reason with them. Okay? And remember, Careblazer, I hope to see you in the live Q&A. Come on board, ask me whatever questions you have. I only do this a few times a year. I sure hope you'll be there. The link is below this video for you to join. As always, I'm going to come back next week with another video. All right, take care. Bye.